Lights, camera, blast off. Tonight, the Russian film crew now in orbit, making history as the first movie actually filmed in space. The actor and director on the ISS tonight. Thousands applied for this unique opportunity. The movie, called The Challenge, is about a surgeon dispatched to space to save a cosmonaut. The crew will film for 12 days on the ISS. Tonight, we're learning more about that devastating oil leak off the coast of California. The governor there declaring a state of emergency, and questions tonight after reports of oil gushing into the ocean for 12 hours before the company shut down its pipeline. And when did officials first know about the leak? Matt Gutman standing by tonight. The bombshell testimony from the Facebook whistleblower. Lawmakers from both parties questioning the former data scientist at Facebook. Her scathing allegations claiming the company's own research shows how it amplifies hate, spreads misinformation, and political unrest. Haugen is accusing the company of hiding information from the public and U.S. government. Facebook, with nearly 3 billion users around the world, responding in real time. Will Americans who got the J&J vaccine be able to get a booster soon? Johnson & Johnson is requesting the FDA grant emergency use authorization for booster shots. Data shows a second shot given 6 months after the first offers 12 times the protection. Imagine growing up in America for decades and suddenly being told you need to leave and leave your family behind. It's a startling reality for an estimated 200,000 young immigrants, the so-called documented dreamers. Our in-depth report tonight.
We're getting a lot of sympathy.
Sympathy doesn't solve your problem.
Right.
Tonight, just a stone's throw from the biggest city in America, and after significant investment in replacing lead pipes, tonight Newark, New Jersey is facing a problem that money may not be able to solve, earning back the community's trust in the water they drink.
Okay, I am pouring bottled water into the pots for dinner tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with that powerful testimony to Congress. Facebook accused of prioritizing profit over people. Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen urging lawmakers to act, saying Facebook has not earned our blind faith. This all comes, of course, 24 hours after a technical glitch had Facebook's 3 billion users in the dark for most of the day yesterday. Haugen told a Senate committee the company's leadership knows how to make Facebook and Instagram safer, but won't make the necessary changes. The senator leading the hearing, Richard Blumenthal, called this moment Facebook's big tobacco moment. Blumenthal detailed how his office created an Instagram account in the name of a young girl, searched for information about healthy eating, and soon after the account was being sent information on anorexia. In an attempt to refute Haugen's testimony in real time, the company released a statement trying to downplay much of what she had to say. But the company did agree it's time to begin to create standard rules for the internet, and it's time for Congress to act. Tonight, we'll hear from the number 2 Republican in the Senate, who was also at that hearing. But first, Terry Moran leads us off.
Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower, painted a stark picture of a tech giant with tremendous power and little sense of responsibility.
The choices being made inside of Facebook are disastrous for our children, for our public safety, for our privacy, and for our democracy. And that is why we must demand Facebook make changes.
Haugen, a former Facebook project manager, smuggled thousands of documents out of the company, internal research that she claims shows Facebook knows the negative impact of its business model. Haugen saying the more anger Facebook users are exposed to, the more time they spend on the site and the more content they consume. And most at risk, she says, kids.
Facebook understands that if they want to continue to grow, they have to find new users. The way they'll do that is by making sure that children establish habits before they have good self-regulation.
By hooking kids.
By hooking kids. I would like to emphasize one of the documents that we sent in on problematic use examined the rates of problematic use by age, and that peaked with 14-year-olds.
Some of Facebook's own data leaked by Haugen shows that Instagram, owned by Facebook, can be especially harmful to teenage girls. The Wall Street Journal, which published some of the findings from that leaked research, alleging that Instagram made body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls, added to feelings of anxiety and depression, and even sent some toward eating disorders.
Here's my message for Mark Zuckerberg. Your time of invading our privacy, promoting toxic content, and preying on children and teens is over. Congress will be taking action.
Facebook tonight saying Haugen never worked on child safety for them or Instagram.
She misrepresented the issues that she testified about. And, you know, she didn't work on these issues at Facebook. And I think that she's mischaracterized a lot of the documents that she stole.
And moments after the hearing ended, the company's head of global policy management tried to put that internal research that Instagram may be harmful to teens in a different light. Facebook's own research shows that Instagram harms teenage girls. How could your company know that, do research on it, and ignore it?
First, that's not an accurate characterization. With regard to this Instagram survey, it was a very small survey of about 40 Instagram teens who are struggling with mental health issues, and they were asked whether Instagram makes things better or worse for them. And on all 12 issues, the majority of both boys and girls who answered these questions said that Instagram either makes things better for them or has no material impact.
So some still feel that it's harmless. Terry Moran joins us now from Capitol Hill. Terry, what else, though, came out of that hearing today about social media's effects specifically on children and teens?
Well, Lindsay, one thing that came out is that there are far more children, young children, who are on social media than Facebook acknowledges. They have tracked some of this, but it is clear that there are hundreds of thousands of children using social media. They say no one should be on Facebook under the age of 13, but even they know that's not true. And they also have found that for those children, the experience is the same as for adults, that the more that they scroll, the more engagement they get, the more the algorithm drives them to darker places. This is something that Frances Haugen was calling on Congress to reform, to protect America's children from a social media platform that is engaging them even with ads. One of the things that came out is that while Facebook does not take ads directed at children, advertisers are smart. They know how the Facebook artificial intelligence works, and they can game it to make ads that will pass muster but get to kids anyway.
Hey, what specific changes is the whistleblower asking lawmakers to impose on Facebook?
She's calling, Lindsay, first for more transparency into Facebook's internal data and decision-making. She's calling for more regulation. She even thought maybe a federal agency to regulate social media was a possibility. And she's calling for reform of that Section 230 provision of the law which shields tech companies from liability for their content. Now, Facebook has also called and pointed out today they would like to see a strengthening of the laws around social media. But after this testimony, I doubt they will like what they get. Lindsay?
Terry Moran, our thanks to you. Joining us now is Senator John Thune of South Dakota, the #2 Republican in the Senate who took part in today's hearing. Senator, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good to be with you.
Hey, what was your biggest takeaway from Frances Haugen's testimony?
I thought it was very compelling, really, frankly, powerful testimony. And the biggest takeaway is that inasmuch as Facebook is claiming to use artificial intelligence to get some of the bad and harmful content off of these algorithms that they use to keep people on their platform, that's not working. And there are a lot of harmful effects, particularly on certain demographic groups, and in particular the young girls. And so very powerful testimony, and I think pretty much a call for action.
You summed up at the end of your questioning, let's get to work. This appears to be an issue where there actually is bipartisan consensus. What do you think that Congress can do, and quickly, to rein in some of these practices at Facebook?
Well, there are things that are hard, Lindsay, and you heard that today, too. I mean, there's a lot of discussion around antitrust and whether Facebook is too big, monopolistic, ought to be broken up. That's a harder thing. It's a complicated issue. But there are some fairly simple things I think we can do. And I mentioned today a bill that I have that requires social media platforms like Facebook to notify consumers when their content is being manipulated, and two, give them an option to see content that is this chronologically timed as opposed to manipulated by an opaque or secret algorithm. And I think that's just fair. I think it seems to me it gives consumers more options, more choice, more freedom, and empowers them to make decisions about whether or not they want to see manipulated content or whether they just want to see straight content.
And Haugen also suggested that Congress set up a new regulatory agency in order to police Facebook and other social media sites, staffed with people like her, experts who essentially know how these organizations and their systems work. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, I'm always reluctant to create new bureaucracies. The Federal Trade Commission does have authority to enforce actions against social media companies. Arguably, there are people like, you know, Ms. Haugen, who we heard today, who have a level of expertise that could be very useful in helping police and audit some of these companies. But before we do that, I think we ought to see if we can, you know, the model that we have in place, use the FTC, but give them the power and the authority to impose penalties when violations occur. I mean, laws have got to be enforced. And first off, you got to come up with a way, with a law in the book that gets you the desired result. But I think that's possible. And as you mentioned earlier, it's one of the rare issues around here on which there seems to be bipartisan agreement. And that is the big tech companies have way too much power, way too much influence in our society today. And there are a lot of harmful side effects that are resulting from the use of these secret algorithms that manipulate the content that people see.
I also want to ask you about the standoff over the debt limit. The U.S. risks defaulting if Congress does not act by October 18th. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said the economy will fall into a recession if that happens. Millions of jobs could be on the line. Houses lost. The stock market could tank. Democrats say that they are willing to address this alone, but need Republicans to drop their filibuster on the issue. What do you feel is the right solution that doesn't involve playing politics as usual?
We've said that, and we've made it very clear going back to July. I mean, we've been very clear with the Democrats that, you know, we are not going to write them a blank check for all the spending and all the taxing they want to do. They essentially say that we need to use this partisan procedure, reconciliation, to expand, you know, the biggest expansion of government in history, the biggest tax increase in history. All we're simply saying is then you also need to use that same partisan process to do the borrowing. It'll happen. We agree with what Secretary Yellen says. The debt limit needs to be raised. We need to continue the full faith and credit of the United States. It's simply a question of who delivers the votes to do that. And there is a procedure in place that the Democrats are well aware of. They control the entire government, the House, the Senate, the White House. They need to deliver the votes to raise the debt limit.
Now, a lot of the times we hear people basically blaming the current administration for all the spending. But as you well know, under President Trump, the U.S. debt increased by a total of $7 trillion during his presidency. Congress voted to increase the debt ceiling 3 times in a bipartisan manner. What has changed since then?
Well, partly that was all bipartisan. You just pointed that out. And a lot of that was pandemic related. And we're not arguing about that because that amount of borrowing has already been covered by the debt limit that expired at the end of July. What we're talking about now is financing new debt or basically giving the government permission to borrow money to finance additional spending. And we are philosophically and fundamentally opposed as Republicans to what the Democrats are trying to do here with this $5 trillion expansion of the federal government and all the tax hikes that go with it. So we don't want to enable that by, basically agreeing to help the Democrats out by supporting that increase in the debt limit. And we don't have to. The Democrats have the votes to do it. And we believe, again, that the borrowing that happened in the previous administration was covered by the debt limit that expired July 31st. What we're talking about here now is new borrowing, new debt. And we believe that because it's going to be used to finance a lot of these programs and expansion of government the Democrats have in mind on their agenda, that they ought to do the borrowing to cover.
Senator John Thune of South Dakota, we thank you so much for your time. Always good to have you on the show.
Thanks, Lindsay. Nice to be with you.
Now to President Biden and his agenda. The president traveling to Michigan, making the case for his infrastructure bill and for the larger social policy package with paid family leave, early education, and resources to help fight climate change. And tonight there could be new signs of movement as Democrats continue negotiations, inching closer to agreement on the size and scope of the package. Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega.
President Biden today taking his sales pitch on the road, hoping to sell his sweeping domestic agenda to union workers in Michigan.
These bills are not about left versus right, or moderate versus progressive, or anything that pits Americans against one another. These bills are about competitiveness versus complacency. They're about opportunity versus decay.
But for Democrats in Congress, it is exactly moderates versus progressives. And now, after weeks of infighting, both sides closer to a compromise on the president's sweeping plan to cover everything from universal pre-K to climate change. The initial price tag was $3.5 trillion. But sources tell ABC News that during a negotiation, President Biden proposed a significantly lower number between $1.9 and $2.2 trillion. The leader of the Progressive Caucus, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, responded she would be willing to drop to as low as $2.5 trillion. And on the moderate side, one of the main holdouts, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, now not ruling out a deal in the new range the president has proposed.
We've been talking about everything. Everyone's talking. It's still negotiation.
President Biden calling that good news.
Sure sounds like he's moving. I hope that's the case. Thank you.
Cecilia Vega joins us from the White House. Cecilia, President Biden is also juggling, of course, this debt ceiling standoff. What's the latest with that?
Yeah, and Lindsay, you could probably hear the helicopters right here because he just landed back at the White House. And right before he landed, he was telling reporters that, look, they're almost out of options on this. He hopes to speak to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell very soon. But we know the reality from talking to both sides in this standoff that there isn't a plan B right now. And as economists have warned, and the president himself has warned, we are inching very dangerously close to an economic crisis right now. Now, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer scheduled a vote for tomorrow. But I got to tell you, Lindsay, this is a procedural vote. The Democrats still don't have the Republican votes that they need in order to avoid this default. And as we've been saying, as it stands right now, Republicans, they're still not budging on this one.
Less than 2 weeks away from that October 18th deadline. Cecilia Vega, our thanks to you. Now to that major oil spill off the coast of California. The governor there declaring a state of emergency, and authorities closing another beach today as the oil continues to spread. Now new questions about just how long it took to report the leak and who might have been exposed before the alarm was sounded. Our chief national correspondent Matt Gutman reports.
Tonight, the Coast Guard announcing they have found the exact location of the oil leak in that pipeline off the Southern California coast that's led the governor here to declare a state of emergency. Officials say divers and remotely operated vehicles found a nearly mile-long section of the pipeline bent and moved 105 feet. And in that section, a 13-inch cut in the pipeline.
It has bowed out in a curve, if you will. About 4,000 foot of that section has bowed out.
And tonight, we know from official reports that on Friday and Saturday, as jets buzzed and swooped over more than 1 million spectators at the Pacific Air Show off of Huntington Beach, that oil spill was rapidly spreading just yards from shore. But questions about the Coast Guard's response to this spill rising after official reports obtained by ABC News show a ship anchored off the coast witnessing an unknown sheen in the water near their vessel at 6:13 p.m. Friday. That ship called in the report 2 hours later at 8:22 p.m. Almost 6 hours after that, a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration satellite image showed an anomaly that was dark against its background with sharp edges, roughly the size of New York's Central Park. NOAA said with high confidence it was oil. But it wasn't until the next morning at 8:55 a.m., more than 12 hours after that first call, that Amplify Energy reported a spill, saying it had shut its pipeline.
We weren't aware of any oil sheens or issues.
Matt Gutman joins us now from Long Beach. And Matt, as you mentioned, serious questions tonight about that timeline and why officials did not send out the alert about the spill until Saturday morning. Talk to us about why those first hours after a spill are especially critical.
They are critical, Lindsay, for a number of reasons. First, the quicker you're able to seal that pipeline, the less oil that leaks into the Pacific. Obviously, the more oil there is out there, the more impact there is to wildlife, to fisheries, to the coastlines, to the tourism industry here. But it's also really important to conceptualize what these pipelines are like. They're pressurized. It's like an airplane cabin, you know, in the movies when somebody pops open a window or they shoot and stuff just flies out the window. It's the same thing with a pipeline. So the longer that cut was there, the longer that oil is not sealed off inside the pipe, the more of it that can escape under pressure. So it's not just leaking, it's actually gushing out at power. So those hours were critical. The Coast Guard telling me there was not much they could have done in those nighttime hours to have stopped it. Once they were aware of it, they jumped on it. Also worth noting, they get a lot of false alarms about these kinds of oil spills, just people in boats out in the water seeing a little bit of gasoline or fuel on the water and calling it in. So it's hard for them to know when it's this serious of a spill. Lindsay?
A very helpful analogy with the comparison of the plane there. Matt Gutman, our thanks to you. Now we move on to the latest on COVID. Major news tonight about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as Dr. Fauci addressed a question many of us have been thinking about. Can we mix vaccines? ABC's Steve Osunsami is at the CDC tonight.
Millions of Americans who've gotten the single-dose Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine could be just weeks away from being able to get a booster shot, a second dose. The FDA meets next week to review the drug maker's data that they filed today. And the CDC could approve the extra shot soon after.
A booster at 2 months increases the efficacy to very high levels. And we believe that a booster at 6 months would actually do even better than that.
Johnson & Johnson says that a second shot of their drug about 2 months after getting the first provides 94% protection against symptomatic disease and 100% protection against severe disease. For now, Americans are only encouraged to get booster shots from the same drug makers who produced their original doses. But Dr. Anthony Fauci says it could soon make sense to mix things up.
Pretty soon, we're going to have the data that will be examined by the FDA to determine whether or not it is safe.
The anger over employers forcing their workers to get vaccinated has led to a warning tonight from the Department of Homeland Security, saying that domestic terrorists, including white supremacists, will likely threaten violence or plot against healthcare personnel, facilities, and public officials. Our latest polling shows that there's also a sharp political divide. 30% of Republicans say they're definitely or probably not getting vaccinated, compared to 4% of Democrats. Over the weekend, Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican, felt this firsthand at a Republican fundraiser.
If you hadn't had the vaccine, you ought to think about getting it, because if you're my age, I didn't tell you to get it, you ought to think about it. Well, I'm glad I got it. 92% of the people in the hospitals in South Carolina are unvaccinated. Got it? 92%.
Yeah, for some people, it's just about not wanting to be told what to do. Steve Osunsami joins us now. And Steve, we of course have the holiday season coming up. What's the latest guidance from health officials to people who want to see their friends and loved ones?
Well, we're still waiting for the CDC to put out its guidance, but Dr. Anthony Fauci has come out saying that parents and children, for example, should enjoy Halloween, but they should wear a mask, which he says, of course, should be easy given the holiday. He says that the key for parents and for people gathering is to enjoy their holiday celebrations, but to take extra precautions if they find themselves around someone who they know isn't immunized. Otherwise, to enjoy Thanksgiving, enjoy Christmas with family. Lindsay?
And Halloween, of course, makes it very easy to wear a mask. Steve Osunsami, our thanks to you. Tonight, we're hearing from Cassie Laundrie, the sister of Brian Laundrie, who police continue searching for in connection with the death of Gabby Petito. She says she doesn't know where her brother is, but wants him to come forward. She sat down exclusively with ABC News. Here's our Victor Akendo.
No, I do not know where Brian is. I'd turn him in.
Overnight, Cassie Laundrie attempting to set the record straight, speaking out for the first time since Gabby Petito's body was found and her brother Brian was reported missing, later named a person of interest in Petito's murder and wanted by the FBI in a fraud investigation.
I really wish he had come to me first that day with the van, because I don't think we'd be here. I worry about him. I hope he's okay, and then I'm angry and I don't know what to think. I would tell my brother to just come forward and get us out of this horrible mess.
And now detailing the last time she saw her brother.
The last time I physically saw it and the last time I physically spoke to my brother was on the 6th. I've tried to get in touch with him. Phone went to voicemail.
Cassie sharing this photo exclusively with ABC News, showing Brian and his 5-year-old nephew camping at Fort DeSoto Park with their parents 5 days before Gabby was reported missing.
We just went for a couple of hours and we ate dinner and had s'mores around the campfire and left. And there was nothing peculiar about it. There was no feeling of grand goodbye. There was nothing. I'm frustrated that in hindsight, I didn't pick up on anything. It was just a regular visit.
By the time Gabby was found 13 days later, Brian had already vanished. The day Cassie learned of his disappearance, she says she immediately told investigators about that camping trip.
It was not hidden from law enforcement. I've been cooperating with the police since day one. I've been in touch with law enforcement.
And now she's calling on her parents to do the same.
Justice for Gabby would look like having someone come forward and tell the truth. I don't know if my parents are involved. I think if they are, then they should come clean.
Cassie says her brother has taken multiple trips for up to 5 days at a time on the Appalachian Trail, where multiple tips have been reported. And over the weekend, a possible sighting was reported to investigators along the nearly 2,200-mile trail near the Tennessee-North Carolina border.
I wasn't sure about what he looked like, and then I went and parked and pulled up the photographs of him, and I'm 99.99% sure that was him.
Police have said they're factoring in Brian's reported skills living off the grid in their search for him, but Cassie says it's unusual for him to be gone for this long.
I'd say Brian's a mediocre survivalist. It wouldn't surprise me if he could last out there a very long time, but also I don't think anything would surprise me at this point. If the FBI finds him in Timbuktu, I'd be like, all right, well, that's where he was. I've got nothing. I hope my brother is alive because I want answers just as much as everybody else.
Is there something on your cheek here? Looks like, did you get hit in the face?
Well, to be honest, I definitely hit him first.
Did he hit you though? I mean, it's okay if you're saying you hit him, and then I understand if he hit you, but we want to know the truth if he actually hit you.
Well, he grabbed me with his nail.
She says the body cam video from the Moab, Utah police encounter is hard to watch.
It's definitely painful to see everybody just be upset. It was pretty typical of them to argue and try and take space from each other, but people saying they saw public domestic violence, I've never seen anything like that from either of them.
Now she wonders if more could have been done.
I definitely feel like if they had all of the 911 calls from the multiple people they said, that I think that it would have gone a lot differently and we'd be in a different situation.
Cassie says she's as concerned as she is for her brother. She is mourning for Gabby and wants her family to know her heart is with them.
I've been cooperating so that everyone gets answers. They deserve answers.
Gabby's parents sending a message to Brian on the Dr. Phil show.
If you truly loved her, you should turn yourself in.
A plea there directly to Laundry. Victor Kendo joins us now. Victor, we also heard from Gabby Petito's parents again today. What did they have to say?
Lindsay, Petito's parents appeared on Dr. Phil, and time and again, they told Brian Laundrie to turn himself in. They believe that he is hiding out, and they also had some pretty harsh words.
Do you believe he's hiding somewhere?
I do.
Why do you believe that?
Because he's a coward. Flat out.
And we're also hearing from the Laundrie family attorney in a statement saying in part that Chris and Roberta Laundrie do not know where Brian is, and any speculation that they assisted Brian in leaving or in avoiding arrest is just wrong. Lindsay?
Victor, thank you. And when we come back, the body camera just released that shows a mother the moments after she jumped into her sewer water to save her 1-year-old. Drinking clean water is easier said than done in some communities, but we visit one where officials say the situation has improved, but the trust gap lingers. But up next, your parents came here legally, yet you may be forced to self-deport and cannot apply for DACA. It's a quirk in our immigration policy that could have dire consequences for so-called documented dreamers.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yeah.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon.
12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
This is American history. A violent white mob, a brutal attack, 300 black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's buried truth. The gripping story brought to light in a new podcast from ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Sex, gambling, fraud, betrayal, and murder. Cutthroat Inc., the podcast. A family on a mission to find their son. A year's worth of conversations with the killer. Cutthroat Inc. Subscribe for free now on your favorite podcast app. Hours. Assault on the Capitol. The ABC News original. Exclusively on Hulu. Now streaming. Now with so much on the line, more Americans are turning to David Muir and ABC's World News Tonight than any other program across all of television.
What you're looking at is the moment right after New Jersey police arrived on scene to find a mother shaken and in tears while saying that her son is fine. She had just jumped into an open manhole to rescue her 1-year-old who fell 7 feet into 2 feet of sewage water. She had called 911 before she jumped in and pulled him out herself. Growing up in America for decades and suddenly facing self-deportation and family separation, it is a startling reality for an estimated 200,000 young immigrants, so-called documented dreamers who have legal status through their parents but age out of the program before they can get a green card. Members of Congress from both parties say that this quirk of the legal immigration system needs an urgent fix, but can they get it done? Here's our Devin Dwyer.
You're not just a Pareen Matra has spent all but 4 months of her life at the University of Iowa.
Sometimes I'll see people who have had classes in elementary school.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So the college senior is the daughter of 2 Indian immigrants who came to study here 20 years ago and who turned their degrees into successful careers as university staff.
What I know of India is purely from trips to see my grandparents, and this is my home.
She grew up playing in hallways of academic buildings where her mother taught language classes, and on the slides outside Iowa City Public Library, where she learned to read and would later volunteer.
I'm a Midwesterner, that's who I am.
You're a Midwesterner indeed. Pareen says she never questioned her immigration status or imagined the predicament she now finds herself in. Possible self-deportation to a country she doesn't know.
So I knew that I wasn't an American citizen. And I just remember being so confused, like, well, why not? Why wasn't I a permanent resident? Why am I different? Why is this happening to me?
As an infant through her teenage years, Pareen was in the U.S. legally as a dependent of her immigrant worker parents.
Everything I know is American. It just doesn't make sense for me to go back to a country that I've lived in for 4 months.
The family got in line for a green card in 2012, but the wait for some Indian nationals is estimated between 39 to 89 years due to visa caps and lengthy backlogs. When she turned 21 in April, the biomedical engineering student was abruptly thrust into a legal limbo, aging out of her dependent visa and the joint green card application with her parents.
Like dreamers, we come to this country as young children And we grow up, and at a certain point, multiple points in our life, we do face the aspect of self-deportation.
The government has granted protection and work visas to hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants, known as Dreamers, through the DACA program, a temporary Band-Aid created by President Obama after Congress failed to agree on a fix. But so-called documented Dreamers like Perrine don't qualify.
I'm a documented dreamer.
I'm a documented dreamer.
I'm a documented dreamer. I'm a documented dreamer.
There are more than 200,000 documented Dreamers currently living legally in the United States, the children of parents on immigrant work visas.
Those documented Dreamers, I think, are in a really difficult situation.
Immigration attorney Jessica Malott says the only legal option is the visa lottery system, which is complex and covered in red tape.
There are options, but all of those options are backlogged for the most part, and so it's not something that's a sure thing that's going to happen immediately.
The Department of Homeland Security pointed to several factors contributing to the backlogs, including the pandemic and a lack of adequate staffing. In a statement to ABC News saying DHS is aware of the predicament that these documented Dreamers face and is working to find legal means to provide relief where possible. Perrine bought time with a short-term student visa while she finishes her degree, but after that, she'll either have to win a work visa through the lottery or be forced to make the difficult choice of staying with her family in the U.S. illegally or self-deporting to India.
My family and I did everything by the book. We have maintained documented status, and we are still stuck in this decades-long line.
For work visa holder and father of three Byung Yoon, the policy is creating slow-rolling family separations.
My children was like this place, so that's the reason why I remained here.
The small business owner in Portland, Oregon, says his oldest son aged out of a dependent visa and had to return to Korea on his own. 17-year-old Hillary Yoon, who's lived in the U.S. since she was an infant, may also have to leave her family behind.
She does not speak Korean very well, and she does not understand Korean culture very well.
There just hasn't been enough attention to this particular flaw in the immigration system.
Deep Patel has been sounding the alarm on Capitol Hill. Founder of the group Improve the Dream, he's been lobbying Congress to fix what experts call an unintended consequence of America's outdated immigration laws.
I think finally we're at a point where people are starting to recognize that this was an issue in the immigration system that really needs fixing.
At Deep's urging last spring, Perrine testified virtually before the House Judiciary Committee.
For the past 9 months, I've been awaiting approval for the change of status to F1 student. I also turned 21 less than 2 weeks ago, so I no longer have dependent status. I aged out of the system.
Members from both parties in the House and the Senate saying it makes moral and economic sense to throw a lifeline to documented Dreamers.
Once you meet them, you realize what a contribution they're already making to this country and what greater contributions they will make in the future.
Congresswoman Deborah Ross of North Carolina is co-sponsoring a bipartisan House bill that would lift the threat of deportation and the inability to work.
What it does is it sets a path for residency, and then ultimately after residency, one of these Dreamers could pursue citizenship, so that a young person doesn't have to immediately self-deport.
A similar measure has been introduced in the Senate, but with Congress deeply divided, immigration relief may be a long shot.
We're just going to keep pushing until we can obtain it, and I hope that we're really close.
Parents like Byung clinging to hope.
What I'm thinking is that America is an immigrant country. Some kind of immigration law will pass.
We're getting a lot of sympathy.
Sympathy doesn't solve your problem.
Right. Sympathy does not solve my problem. And so it is a step, and I'm grateful for that.
For ABC News, I'm Devin Dwyer in Iowa City, Iowa.
Our thanks to Devin for that. It's still ahead here on Prime. The major recall targeting older Volvos will explain. And the world's oceans are warming. We take a look at the impact by the numbers. But first, our post of the day, Adele. She is gracing us once again with her presence.
World News Now.
And America This Morning.
The best new video.
The breaking news overnight.
Emergency crews called to the town of Surfside.
U.S. airstrikes hitting targets in Iraq and Syria.
The stories people are talking about.
You don't want to shave your legs? Don't. I was going to say,
oh my. Got it.
And what to expect in the day ahead.
ABC World News Now and America This Morning.
Starting at 2 a.m. Eastern.
Up all night to keep you up to date.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
Right now, with so much at stake, Sunday mornings, this is the place. Taking on all the tough questions. Straightforward reporting. No spin, no hype, no bull. See why Sunday mornings, more and more Americans are now turning first to ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos.
Welcome to This Week.
When you wake up in the morning, when you wake up in the morning, darling, I'll be by your side. I'll be there by your side. I'll be everything you wanted. I'll be there by your side. If you need a light to shine it, hold out your hand, let the stars shoot again, let the light shine in through the dark.
Good morning, America.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Welcome back, everyone. Now to the world's oceans and the warming that's causing a massive loss of coral reef around the globe. We take a look by the numbers. Since 2009, we've lost a staggering 14% of the world's coral due to warming oceans and a process called bleaching. That's according to the largest ever analysis of coral reef health and the first comprehensive look at coral in 13 years in a report published today by NOAA and its global partners. This loss equates to roughly 7,000 square miles of coral. For comparison, that's more than all the living coral in Australia. Meanwhile, reef algae has increased by 20% in the past decade. That's bad news because it's a sign of stress, and algae growth reduces the ability of corals and the marine life they support to reestablish themselves. The world's coral reefs cover just 0.2% of the planet's seafloor, but incredibly, they support at least 25% of all marine species, and they contribute to the coastal protection and food of hundreds of millions of people worldwide. And scientists say that some of this coral loss could potentially be reversed. Coral reefs have recovered in the past, but they say the time to address global warming is now. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime tonight. The FBI raid targeting major cities' police unit, what we know about the investigation, and why Peaches is more than a song title for Justin Bieber. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute.
Yeah.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
All eyes on the Facebook whistleblower Tuesday.
I used to work at Facebook.
Former product manager Frances Haugen blasting the social media giant in her testimony before Congress.
The choices being made inside of Facebook are disastrous for our children, for our public safety, for our privacy, and for our democracy. And that is why we must demand Facebook make changes.
Haugen claims the company put profits before public good, purposely sowing division to keep users engaged.
They want you to believe that this is just part of the deal. I am here today to tell you that's not true. These problems are solvable. I came forward at great personal risk because I believe we still have time to act. But we must act now.
A representative of Facebook says Haugen did not have access to research data.
The FBI raided several locations tied to the NYPD Sergeants Union.
Yeah, agents today were at both the Sergeant Benevolent Association's headquarters in Lower Manhattan and the home of its president in Nassau County.
The probe that is being conducted by the FBI and the Public Corruption Unit of the U.S. Attorney's Office. That's what we know right now. We know that this is all very broad at this point, but that's all we are hearing from investigators. The FBI is not telling us exactly what they are looking into. Mayor Bill de Blasio was asked about the situation today.
I don't know what's happening. All I hear is an FBI raid. I don't know the specifics. I don't know who it's directed at. I want to really hear the details before I comment further.
Volvo is issuing a recall for nearly 260,000 older cars in the U.S. The company warns the front driver's airbag could explode, spraying shrapnel inside the vehicle. The problem already blamed for at least one death. The recall includes S60 sedans from 2001 through 2009 and S80s from 2001 to 2006.
Worth an estimated $697 million.
A lottery ticket worth millions. In fact, it's nearly $700 million. One lucky person holds the winning ticket in last night's Powerball drawing, sold in Central California at an Albertsons grocery store.
The jackpot ranks as the 5th largest in Powerball history and the 7th largest jackpot in U.S. lottery history. 5 others won the $1 million prize.
Justin Bieber is entering the weed business, taking inspiration from his hit song.
I got my peaches out in Georgia. I get my weed from California.
The pop star releasing joints called Peaches Pre-Rolls, available in California, Nevada, Massachusetts, and Florida. A portion of the proceeds goes to charity. Bieber joins a long list of celebrities to join the cannabis business, including Nicole Kidman, Jay-Z, Martha Stewart, and of course, Willie Nelson.
Dreams didn't make us kings.
dragons did.
The dragons are back. HBO dropped this teaser trailer for the highly anticipated Game of Thrones prequel series. The series called House of the Dragon, following the Targaryen family 200 years before they were ousted from the Iron Throne.
Gods. Kings. Fire.
But in terms of release, we're about as clueless as Jon Snow. The 10-episode series debuts sometime next year.
Welcome back, everyone. Now to the push to improve America's drinking water. The roughly $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill passed by the Senate and still under consideration by the House would provide $15 billion to replace lead pipes all across the country. Newark, New Jersey has already invested significant amounts of money in replaced pipes. But beyond money, in communities like Newark, it's about convincing residents that the water is safe again. Phil Lipoff reports.
Newark, New Jersey's largest city, a cultural and shipping hub, and a gateway to the world, just miles away from New York City, but in many ways, a world away. 5 years after a water crisis, and despite the city's best efforts, some residents still don't trust their tap water.
Okay, I am pouring bottled water into the pots for dinner tonight.
Back in 2016, high levels of lead were detected in the water of 30 public schools.
My first thing was Flint, Michigan. The first thing I thought about was, okay, here we go again.
By 2018, Newark had one of the highest amounts of lead in any major U.S. city. City leaders providing water filters and water bottles to more than 40,000 households. The scenes reminiscent of the Flint, Michigan water crisis.
We are in panic mode in this city because the feds had to come in to tell us to stop drinking the water.
Fast forward 2.5 years, Newark has all but overcome its lead crisis. Since spring of 2019, the city has replaced more than 22,000 lead service lines, one of the main reasons for high lead levels in homes. We were there as construction crews dug up centuries-old lead. What's really impressive about what they've done here in Newark specifically is they're doing about 1,000 lead lines a month. Take a look. 22,000 of those lines in just over 2 years. And the minute they get that line out, they're ready to go. They've got the copper line here waiting to go in. Newark was able to quickly replace the lead lines in part because of a $120 million loan coupled with a city ordinance.
We didn't need the owner's permission. We only need a resident, a tenant, anybody to give us access to come in and replace the line.
And that was huge.
That was huge. It was a game changer. We've actually replaced every known lead service line on record.
Still, Newark is now facing a challenge that money can't solve, convincing residents affected by this crisis that the water is now safe.
The water is just, a clear example of how things are able to, be neglected. Many people already knew that a lot of our water was bad anyway, so I always grew up not even drinking from water fountains when I went to school and stuff like that. So it's like, that distrust, it's deep.
Shakima Thomas's 7-year-old son, Bryce, tested positive for lead in 2018, even though the pipes in her home are made of copper.
We haven't got another test since that first test because it was such a traumatizing experience for him. Not gonna make him get another needle. He doesn't want to do it. He was screaming through the whole process.
In March of this year, Shakima paid a private lab to test the lead in her water. The results were stunning. The lead from her kitchen sink was 130 parts per billion. Shakima also got a water test from Newark in April, but the city lost those results. The EPA states that water systems have to take action if more than 10% of taps exceed the lead action level of 15 parts per billion. The agency also says there is no safe limit for lead in drinking water, and that in children, low levels of lead exposure have been linked to various conditions, including learning disabilities and impaired hearing. The city of Newark tells ABC News that there are resources available to help children who have been affected by lead. But Shakima says those services were denied to Bryce.
I took that as, yeah, he has lead in his system, but he's not poisoned enough for us to help. That's how I took it. I felt bad. Felt terrible. You know, I think any parent would feel that way. We're supposed to protect our kids, and that's a situation that was completely out of my control. And I can't believe they did that to our kids.
Shakima now spends between $60 and $80 a month on bottled water. She drinks with it, cooks with it, and because of that, she thinks her son is doing well. A little more than 27% of Newark's population lives in poverty. That's more than double the national average of 10.5%. And according to the National Institute of Health, low-income populations are disproportionately affected by lead exposure. 4-year-old Anila tested positive for lead just a few weeks ago.
I received a phone call from the doctor's office stating that my daughter's lead levels was high. Her levels was between like a 9 and a 10. She said her levels is supposed to be maybe around 1 or 2-ish, but it's not. It's hard for her at times to sit down. You know, she acts out at times. She can't stay focused.
Crystal had an inspector come to her home to test the paint, another potential source of lead, but she says no one came to test the water.
I want to know what's causing my baby, you know, to have lead and her levels to be really high.
Now she comes to the Newark Water Coalition distribution site twice a week and fills jugs like these so she can have drinking water at home. And she's not alone.
Thank you, Kevin. You're welcome.
The Newark Water Coalition says there has not been a drop in demand for people coming to get the water, despite the city replacing nearly all lead service lines. Because for some here, the issue is more than just water, it's about trust. For Shakima, what would you say to her, and will you be able to get someone to her house to test?
Yes, we'll be able to get someone to our house to test the water. We're testing thousands of water samples, and one may get lost or mixed up, but we're here to help.
Don't get frustrated, just call back up.
Don't get frustrated, work with us, we'll get it done.
But for Shakima Thomas, relying on the city isn't easy. She says after a number of unsuccessful attempts to have city officials test her water, she's all but given up.
I don't think I can trust my elected officials because they've shown that they're unreliable, consistently. The only thing I can do is buy bottled water and, you know, bank on the fact that that's safe. But I'd rather drink that than knowing I'm drinking lead.
Phil Lipoff, ABC News, Newark, New Jersey.
Our thanks to Phil for that. Before we go tonight, our image of the day. If you've ever wanted to own something from notorious gangster Al Capone, listen up. Several of his items, ranging from these diamond cufflinks to even some of his guns, are going up on auction in California. 174 items in all, if you have any interest. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Now we're staying on top of a few things, including the staggering and frankly horrifying reports of abuse in the French Catholic Church. More than 300,000 abused. Yes, you heard that number right. And the 19-year-old actress fighting off breast cancer. We'll hear from Miranda McKeon about her journey coming up.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new Hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
The ladies you love, the hottest topics happening now. There's only one place to find it all.
You guys are having the hard conversations. I love The View.
The most watched #1 daytime talk show is The View. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Hi there, I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. Millions of Americans who have received the single-dose Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine are now just weeks away from being able to get a booster shot. The FDA is expected to meet next week to review the drug maker's data filed today, and the CDC could approve the extra shot soon thereafter. For now, Americans are only encouraged to get booster shots from the same drug makers who produce their original doses, but Dr. Anthony Fauci says it could soon make sense to mix things up. President Biden hit the road hoping to sell his sweeping agenda to union workers in Michigan today, but back at our nation's capital, the numbers game between moderates and progressives continues. Sources tell ABC News that during a negotiation, President Biden proposed a significantly lower number between 1.9 to 2.2 trillion. Despite the offer, Senator Joe Manchin insists negotiations are still ongoing. A man is in custody after he was removed from a suspicious SUV near the Supreme Court earlier today. Officers approached the vehicle that was allegedly illegally parked. When they tried speaking to the suspect, he said, quote, "The time for talking is done." Police then brought in crisis negotiation officers. There's no information on motive and no weapons were found. Thankfully, everyone managed to walk away safely. Now back to Facebook, the social media giant that touches billions of people's lives around the globe. Today we heard searing testimony on Capitol Hill from a former employee turned whistleblower. What she said and how the company is now pushing back. Here's ABC's Terry Moran on Capitol Hill.
Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower, painted a stark picture of a tech giant with tremendous power and little sense of responsibility.
The choices being made inside of Facebook are disastrous for our children, for our public safety, for our privacy, and for our democracy. And that is why we must demand Facebook make changes.
Haugen, a former Facebook project manager, smuggled thousands of documents out of the company, internal research that she claims shows Facebook knows the negative impact of its business model. Haugen saying the more anger Facebook users are exposed to, the more time they spend on the site and the more content they consume. And most at risk, she says, kids.
Facebook understands that if they want to continue to grow, they have to find new users. The way they'll do that is by making sure that children establish habits before they have good self-regulation.
By hooking kids.
By hooking kids. I would like to emphasize one of the documents that we sent in on problematic use examined the rates of problematic use by age, and that peaked with 14-year-olds.
Some of Facebook's own data leaked by Haugen shows that Instagram, owned by Facebook, can be especially harmful to teenage girls. The Wall Street Journal, which published some of the findings from that leaked research, alleging that Instagram made body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls, added to feelings of anxiety and depression, and even sent some toward eating disorders.
Here's my message for Mark Zuckerberg. Your time of invading our privacy, promoting toxic content, and preying on children and teens is over. Congress will be taking action.
Facebook tonight saying Haugen never worked on child safety for them or Instagram.
She misrepresented the issues that she testified about. And, she didn't work on these issues at Facebook, and I think that she's mischaracterized a lot of the documents that she stole.
And moments after the hearing ended, the company's head of global policy management tried to put that internal research that Instagram may be harmful to teens in a different light. Facebook's own research shows that Instagram harms teenage girls. How could your company know that, do research on it, and ignore it?
First, that's not an accurate characterization. With regard to this Instagram survey, it was a very small survey of about 40 Instagram teens who are struggling with mental health issues, and they were asked whether Instagram makes things better or worse for them. And on all 12 issues, the majority of both boys and girls who answered these questions said that Instagram either makes things better for them or has no material impact.
Our thanks to Terry. And joining us now is Imran Ahmed, the founding CEO of the nonprofit Center for Countering Digital Hate. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Just curious, right off the top, as someone who has studied how Facebook and Instagram have spread misinformation and hate speech, what did you take away from today's hearing?
Well, look, I think for those of us who've been studying and reporting on what we found about the platforms for some time, there is a degree of validation that, perhaps we weren't crazy after all, that these problems really do exist. And the second is an intense sense of frustration, because unless today is backed up with action, then how much more evidence can we possibly accrue that the harms being created by these platforms are intolerable, and that they are avoidable? That if the platforms put people before profits, or at least, change that balance a little bit, we could deal with them.
And Facebook came out with a statement during the hearing and dismissed whistleblower Frances Haugen as a former product manager who worked at Facebook for less than 2 years and was not in any meetings with senior company officials. But they also said, quote, that it is time for Congress to act. What do you make of the company's response? Do you feel like they're worried?
Well, look, Facebook have a playbook. It's deny, deflect, delay, and they're in the delay phase right now. They know that action has to be taken because, look, there's such evidence now that Facebook have caused immense harm to our society, driven suicidal ideation in young women, increased the amount of hate speech and the prevalence of hate in our society. CCVH has done research, for example, looking at the algorithm. We did a study just a few months ago which showed that the algorithm both broadens and deepens people's extremisms. And Facebook that time came back and said, that's just ridiculous. We don't have any evidence of that ourselves. It turns out, thanks to Frances Haugen's leaks from within the company, documents they themselves had produced, that they not only knew that what we were saying was true, they'd independently verified it themselves.
And so it's really irrelevant, I guess I want to say, based on the statement that they supplied, whether she worked with the people in the C-suite or not, right? Because she has the documented evidence, really, or information from inside the company.
Look, she has the receipts. And the receipts are that they've been making vast amounts of money, and the price has been paid by us in society, by young women, by Black, by Muslim people, by gay people, those who've been the subject of hate, those also who've been toxified by conspiracism, which has flowed unabated through their platforms, driven, in fact, she has proven, Frances Haugen, by the algorithm. And at that point, look, they failed to act, even though they've had the evidence. It's now actually the onus has shifted to legislators. Are they going to fail to act as well?
Do you think that we'll start to see more whistleblowers coming forward?
I would hope so. And, to anyone that's thinking about whether or not they should be coming forward now, look, Facebook have said so much. They've had so many chances to put things right. It's time for those inside the company to help those of us outside the company to fact-check Facebook, because Facebook itself is one of the greatest spreaders of disinformation in our society. Ironically, that disinformation is about their own platform.
And we've seen other high-profile tech hearings and calls to action, but Congress has little to show for it, really. Senator Amy Klobuchar said privacy laws haven't been updated because the companies, quote, throw a bunch of money around and flood Congress with lobbyists. Would you say that she's right?
Well, she's absolutely right. Look, the playbook for Facebook is initially deny, then deflect and blame someone else, then delay taking action. And the fourth step is throw dollars at it. So the dollars have been chucked at all these companies, all the politicians who might be able to take action against them. Nearly 200 million was spent in 2020 by Facebook and Google. They spend more than Exxon and Philip Morris on trying to persuade people not to take action against them. And then they have the chutzpah to sort of go out there and say, we're keen for legislation. Well, if you're so keen for legislation, why have you spent $200 million trying to make sure it never happens?
And one point that Haugen made today was that this is a global problem. Facebook is used by billions of people around the world. Is there anything that Americans can learn from how other countries or governments are tackling the same challenges raised by Facebook?
Well, funnily enough, I was actually back in the United Kingdom just a few weeks ago because they are legislating a mammoth bill called the Online Safety Bill. I was the first witness to the committee that's assessing that piece of legislation. And what I suggested was really important, is that we need a transparency revolution in big tech. Right now, we can't see inside the algorithms. We can't see how they make enforcement decisions about whether or not people have violated their terms and conditions. For example, anti-vaxxers, people spreading racially motivated hate. And we need a transparency revolution on the economics. We need to understand who is it that they really serve and how is it that the advertising market works on these platforms. It's really important because these are some of the most important ways in which we share information, we create our values, we set our social mores, our attitudes and behaviors in society, transact business. And also, they're really, really great platforms, and that's why so many of us use them. They are, of course, the means by which we gain succor. We speak to our friends and family, the people that we love. We show vulnerability in society. And it turns out that that's all been toxified by Facebook's algorithm and by bad actors that they've allowed to operate on their platform.
Imran Ahmed, we thank you so much for your time and insight tonight.
My pleasure.
Now to the urgent race for Congress to prevent our country from defaulting on its debt. President Biden warns of dire consequences if the debt limit is not raised. But Senate Republicans are refusing to help, even after raising the debt limit several times under President Trump. ABC's Ike Ejiochi is in Washington with the latest.
Today, Democratic leaders in Congress say progress on President Biden's Build Back Better agenda is being made, but details are still getting ironed out.
There is more work to do, and so we are going to keep at it.
President Biden meeting virtually with moderate Democrats today after meeting with progressives and leadership Monday ahead of his trip to Michigan, where he's selling the public on both his bipartisan infrastructure and Build Back Better social spending initiatives.
These bills are about competitiveness versus complacency. They're about opportunity versus decay.
While Democrats continue to work to pass both of those bills, another deadline is looming over Capitol Hill, October 18th, when Congress will run out of money to pay the bills it owes unless the debt ceiling is raised. It's traditionally done on a bipartisan basis, but Republicans say they won't help this time, accusing the White House of wanting to add trillions in new domestic spending.
While our economy still struggles to fully recover, President Biden wants to slap Americans with the biggest tax hike in half a century.
Financial experts say the consequences will be dire for the country if Congress doesn't. A recent study by Moody's says a default would be a cataclysmic economic scenario and could cost the U.S. economy up to 6 million jobs, wipe out as much as $15 trillion in household wealth, $20 billion owed to seniors on Social Security could go unpaid, and the unemployment rate could soar to around 9%, well above the current rate of 5%. Schumer now telling colleagues that a bill to raise the debt ceiling must come by the end of the week, or he might keep them in the Capitol through the weekend.
We're telling Republicans, we're not asking you to vote for it. Just let us vote.
Our thanks to Ike Ejiochi. And in other news, former President Donald Trump has fallen from the Forbes 400 list of wealthiest Americans. It's the first time in more than 2 decades that he has not made the cut. His net worth reported to be $2.5 billion. Forbes says that it has shrunk by $600 million since the start of the pandemic. Now to a jaw-dropping report from France about decades of abuse in the Catholic Church. A special commission looking back 70 years says that hundreds of thousands of children, most of them boys, were sexually assaulted by priests and others connected to the church. The details truly are stunning and the silence of the church chilling. Here's ABC's James Longman.
The shame of the Catholic Church, rocked tonight by yet more devastating child abuse revelations. In a press conference today, investigators revealed this staggering number: more than 200,000 children abused by French clergy over the past 70 years, and more than 300,000 when you include lay people associated with the church. Their report saying the church had shown deep, total and even cruel indifference for years, protecting itself rather than its victims. Most of those abused were boys aged between just 10 and 13. Olivier Savignac was one of them. Yes, it's an earthquake. Yes, it's a hurricane. Yes, it's a tsunami. And it has to be a tsunami, because today, when we see the numbers, it's so damning that no one can be in denial, both within the Catholic Church and for the entire society.
And just a terrible story. James Longman joins us now. James, how is Pope Francis reacting to this report?
Well, Lindsay, Pope Francis says that his thoughts go to the victims with great sorrow in his heart. He said that he also had great respect for them, for having the bravery to come forward. He also said he had thoughts for the Church of France itself, so that in the awareness of this terrible reality, it may embark on a path of redemption. French bishops today said that they were shocked. One bishop called it a bombshell, but the investigators of this commission said that they didn't really sense that the Church really wanted to make any changes until as recently as 2015. So I think the Church has a lot of work to do to get people's trust back. Lindsay?
Obviously so. And James, can you give us more details about these allegations and how these priests, nuns, and church associates were allegedly able to abuse hundreds of thousands of children over those decades?
Well, it seems that the worst of the abuse happened between 1950 and 1970, and then there was a resurgence in the 1990s. The majority of the victims were young boys, but there were also young girls. They were sexually abused by nuns in their care. Some of the details there are truly, truly shocking. A lot of young boys do work, volunteer, if you like, as altar boys, also in choirs across France. It's also the case that of these 300,000 or so cases, 100,000 were perpetrated by lay people, often teachers at schools linked with churches. I think largely the reason why this was able to go on for so long and it became such a big problem is because of repeat offenders. Because when abuse was reported, if it was reported, rather than do something about it, rather than report that clergy person to the authorities, they would just move them to another part of France, and that person was then able to re-offend. So I think this idea that prolific predators were protected by the church, and this was hidden. It was a systematic process of hiding predation, and that is what the investigators point to. I think the thing that was really worrying people, though, is that of all these tens of thousands of cases, fewer than 12 dozen of them are going to be able to go to some kind of criminal process because of the statute of limitations. The investigators, this commission, it says that these victims are owed compensation. Even if the statute of limitations runs out, these victims should be paid for what they've gone through. But like I said, there's a lot of trust that the Catholic Church has to rebuild in France and across the world, because we've seen these cases pop up in many, many different countries, including in the United States.
Right. We've heard these stories again and again. James Longman, our thanks to you. Tonight, we are hearing from Cassie Laundrie, the sister of Brian Laundrie, who police continue searching for in connection with the death of Gabby Petito. She says she doesn't know where her brother is, but wants him to come forward. She sat down exclusively with ABC News. Here's our Victor Oquendo.
3 weeks into the all-out manhunt for Brian Laundrie, Gabby Petito's parents, sitting down with Dr. Phil, had this message for Brian.
Turn yourself in.
Turn yourself in.
Turn yourself in.
Why?
We want to know the truth. Because if you truly loved her, you should turn yourself in.
You're only making it worse.
Petito's father saying he believes Brian is in hiding.
Do you believe he's hiding somewhere? I do. Why do you believe that? Because he's a coward.
Brian's sister, Cassie Laundrie, who spoke exclusively to ABC News overnight, says she doesn't know where her brother is, and if she did, she would turn him in. Like Gabby's parents, she wants answers, even from her own family.
I don't know if my parents are involved. I think if they are, then they should come clean.
The attorney for Brian's parents, Chris and Roberta Laundrie, stating in part that they do not know where Brian is, and any speculation that they assisted Brian in leaving or avoiding arrest is just wrong. Calls to Brian's phone now go directly to voicemail, Cassie says, and she's now concerned for her brother, but she wants the Petitos to know she's doing everything she can to help.
I've been cooperating so that everyone gets answers. I mean, we feel for them.
Our thanks to Victor. She's only 19, but actress Miranda McKeon, best known for her role in the series Anne with an E, is in a battle for her life after being diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Our Kaylee Hartung sat down with Miranda, who opened up about her treatment and journey.
Hi everyone, so this is what life looks like, round 4 of chemo.
Miranda McKeon never imagined this was the story she'd be sharing.
I did cold tapping.
At just 19 years old, the Anne with an E actress felt an unusual lump in her breast.
I have stage 3 breast cancer.
Women younger than 40 account for just about 4% of breast cancer cases in the U.S., and Miranda is one of them.
The young women diagnosed with breast cancer struggle with fertility, pregnancy concerns, body image, financial toxicity.
Before her treatment could even begin, she said her doctors presented her with an important decision.
It was explained to me that with chemotherapy treatment, there is risks of infertility down the line, and fertility was not something that I had ever considered.
She quickly began the regimen of hormone injections and froze her eggs.
Have the conversations about a treatment plan for a 19-year-old been different than if you were older?
The treatment is still the same protocol for my type of hormone-positive cancer.
It takes what it takes.
Yes.
To fight cancer, no matter your age.
It's true. I am spending every other Tuesday in the clinic while my friends are at class. I'd rather be in class, but this is my job right now.
Miranda has an aggressive tumor, but she has, at the end of the day, a curable tumor. And so she is knee-deep in aggressive chemotherapy.
I think I've put my head down and been like, you know what, we're going to keep this on a positive track, because it could go dark quickly, but that's not where I need to be living.
Because the key word there is living.
Yes, and living well.
Our thanks to Kaylee for that. Still to come, why a former Nazi secretary who tried to escape the beginning of her trial for actions she made decades ago has been released. And the NBA is turning 75. Our look at this uniquely American sport that has now gone global.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute. Yes. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
This is American history. A violent white mob, a brutal attack, 300 black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's buried truth. The gripping story brought to light in a new podcast from ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Sex, gambling, fraud, betrayal, and murder. Cutthroat Inc., the podcast. A family on a mission to find their son. A year's worth of conversations with the killer. Cutthroat Inc. Subscribe for free now on your favorite podcast app. 24 hours, Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. Now with so much on the line, more Americans are turning to David Muir and ABC's World News Tonight than any other program across all of television.
Welcome back, everyone. We're tracking several international headlines at this hour. Tear gas, fire, and a cloud of smoke enveloped the Bolivian capital of La Paz as clashes between cocoa farmers and police continue. The conflict, which has been ongoing for weeks now, stems from a battle between pro and anti-government groups fighting for control of La Paz's main cocoa market. An update on the 96-year-old ex-Nazi camp secretary who skipped her court date last week and was then captured again. Despite facing more than 110,000 counts of accessory to murder, she was released from detention. A statement from the court said the judges suspended the arrest warrant and released her, ordering unspecified safeguards. The South Korean culture continues to explode around the globe. The takeover has now officially entered the English language. More than 24 Korean words, including K-drama, now form part of our lexicon. Fun fact, the oldest K word in the Oxford Dictionary is the word Korean, which was first added in 1933. Tipping off 75 years of greatness, the NBA is celebrating their landmark anniversary in a major way with a season-long campaign and film called NBA Lane to commemorate the milestone. ABC's Kana Whitworth's got an inside look.
Welcome to NBA Lane, where dreams come true.
It's been a golden era, 75 unbelievable years.
Our 75th anniversary, and just being a part of the league for the last 19 years. I got some type of staple going on inside these 75 years. It's about the setting it off for the future, you know, so when we get to 100 years.
This game started off being a kind of a small community. Now it's grown into a global game. So many great players has graced our presence with, you know, their talent and made us better human beings.
To be 75 years old and seeing the NBA go into its 75th year is very impressive.
As we took a trip down NBA Lane, we met with some of the league's biggest stars.
So you won the dunk contest.
Yeah.
Tell me about your role in this film.
So I'm dunking on the bus, and I get to catch alley-oop, throw something down.
So what is it like to get to take part in something like that?
Getting together guys, you know, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with Dirk and Lavine and Magic Larry, LeBron, Durant, it's amazing. And for me, a kid from Argentina that ended up playing in the NBA and winning championships, being also here is just like mind-blowing. Besides, my kids are gonna love it.
Basketball legends aren't the only ones we'll see in the film. Actor and producer Michael B. Jordan narrates and stars in the project.
You are driving a bus, that bus right there behind you. So just tell us about the experience.
It's been great, you know. Kids are awesome, and I'm basically just giving them a tour down, you know, the last 75 years of NBA memories.
Okay, you're like the history teacher.
I'm like the cool history teacher.
While honoring the 75-year legacy, the league will also pay tribute to NBA icon and beloved Lakers legend, the late Kobe Bryant, who's forever changed both the game and the players.
You're starting to play basketball. Who are you idolizing?
I was the biggest Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant fan. Like, those were my two, idols. Got to play against Kobe for a couple years in the NBA. My rookie year, Kobe's literally guarding me. He comes up, pats me on the butt and says, "Keep going, young fella." And I'm in shock, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is real. So that was my real first welcome to the NBA moment.
You have been an NBA fan for your whole life. So do you have a favorite NBA moment?
Probably the last time I seen Kobe play, seeing him in his element, the way he carried himself, I think was super impactful for me.
The NBA and its rich history encompasses much more than just basketball. The intersection between sport and social justice has never been more clear, especially with its renewed focus on HBCUs, something Michael B. Jordan is also spotlighting with his upcoming basketball showcase.
You work closely with historically Black colleges and universities, so tell me about this upcoming Invesco QQQ Legacy Classic.
I think it's something that I'm super proud of, shining a light on HBCUs so they can start to, get the respect and I think the attention that they deserve.
You have really set out to make change within your work, and that's a value that really aligns with the NBA.
I think specifically seeing the NBA and the players stepping up to the plate and really doubling down on the efforts for inclusion, diversity, equal rights, and it's just setting an example for future generations and for future activists and leaders to be unapologetically proud and demand change.
As a global institution, the NBA's impact on culture and community is undeniable. 75 years, and they're just getting started.
Our thanks to Kana for that. That is our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.
World News Now
And America This Morning.
The best